Hello, you guys. It's Danielle K. White, and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. Okay, guys, I've had this podcast going for probably about 5 years. I've had a lot of hairstylists on here. I did it with my business partner for a while. And then just recently I've been inviting a lot of guests because I think that everybody has such an amazing story and it would be selfish for us to hold back our stories. So today, you guys, I'm really excited to announce a special guest, Kaitlin O'Toole. She's amazing. We're kind of neighbors. I actually met, when did I first meet you? Went to dinner?
Yes. Just a random dinner. My boyfriend's like, we're going to dinner. You have 10 minutes to get ready. And I'm like, oh, no.
But I remember, I sat across from you.
Yes.
And I can't remember your friend's name, but we sat and talked and when you just vibe with people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's super cool. And it's funny because I always say I'm a little bit antisocial. So it's people will pop out of nowhere and then they're like, where'd Danielle go? And 6 months later, reconnect with people. But I follow you on social media and I've heard a lot of your story. And you have such an amazing story. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, because I think, I said, when women share their stories, it's very empowering. And not only that, I think when you share that vulnerability, it gives other people permission. And that's so big in life, because I think a lot of times we just think that we're stuck. Someone says, hey, this is the cards you got dealt in life. And we believe it. And we abide by these rules that we don't even know where these rules came from, right?
Yes.
It's just, we believe so much what we're told and we don't actually understand what we can create. So I want to start kind of from the beginning.
Okay.
So you told me a little bit of your story at dinner, and you had been told you had an autoimmune disease.
Yeah, multiple autoimmune diseases. It started when I was working on camera. And I was working for a company called DraftKings in New York. And I had this fantasy football show. And I would just stop talking in the middle of nowhere. Kind of like this. And I would just almost lights are out. And I had no recollection of it. And so the producers are like, Kate, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And it wasn't until they started playing things back. And it was
froze?
Just froze. And I don't even remember it. And so it was a few years of trying to figure out what was wrong, and eventually I got diagnosed with neurological Lyme disease, which was basically attacking my immune system, and then it was just a roll of diagnoses.
How old were you at the time?
That's a good question. Well, I started having these issues in 2012, and so I'm 34, so 22. Yeah, 22. I just got to New York. I was like, this is what dreams are made of. Right. Let's go. And I was like, I'm really tired, but everyone's tired. It's New York City. And so I kind of was in denial because I was so after my dreams that I didn't want to pay attention to that until it got to a point of it being just debilitating.
Your body was shutting down.
It was shutting down. It was so bad that I didn't want to leave my apartment in New York, because if the doorman said hi to me, I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't form sentences. I couldn't remember anything. And it just kind of went from bad to worse. And the thing that can happen with a lot of people when we enter what's just dis-ease, just something is wrong in our body.
Right.
And we go to a doctor and they try to figure it out. Yeah. And a lot of them only know what they've experienced. So it went from Lyme disease to you have lupus to years of just getting worse and worse.
What were your symptoms? Just feeling kind of run down, tired? Did you just feel sick all the time?
I felt extremely exhausted. I had terrible brain fog. I couldn't find the words. I started having in my right knee where I could barely walk. And I walked everywhere in New York. Yeah. My hair was coming out in clumps.
Your body was literally shutting down.
It was so bad. So bad. And then I started having these really, really terrible stomach problems. And a few years earlier, I got diagnosed with celiac, which at the time wasn't trendy. It was you couldn't find gluten-free anything. So I didn't even know what it meant. But I was like, okay, I'm not eating gluten. I'm taking all these medicines. Why am I getting worse? And that's when they went in and discovered I had something called scleroderma, which is this rare autoimmune where it has to do with your elasticity. And so basically what was happening is, for a majority of people, it affects the outside and they can harden, right? So this is kind of something similar to Celine Dion is going with right now. But mine was affecting me internally. So my large and small intestines were hardening, and it was moving up through my heart and into my throat. Oh, wow. So part of the symptoms, if we were talking, I would be
out of breath,
constantly. And so in 2017, they did all these tests and they said, the speed that this is going, we give you 5 years best. And it was just this surreal moment of this doctor telling me this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait.
You're like, no, wait, like, you're supposed to fix it.
Yeah, like, and I started doing all the things, and it was a big moment of like, I couldn't even really work at the time. So I decided at that time I'd leave New York to go to California because I thought like the weather and the sunshine, like this will heal me. But the biggest lesson I learned is that nothing changes unless we change. And so even though I left where I left my environment, I was the same person. I was the same person running the same programs, accepting the same beliefs. Like you said, how do we even believe these things? And of course, what we do is put our belief in, a doctor. It's someone in a white coat, it's an authority figure. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but it kind of got to the point where I had to try to do something else because I wanted to live. And it's in those moments that you either accept, believe, and surrender, or if you're like me, faith kicks in. And you're like, there's got to be another way.
So where was the turn?
So I came out to California, and it wasn't an immediate turn. Like I stopped working, I got a new boyfriend, I started traveling, I started doing these things that, there's something called a sponsoring thought. So it's like we're taking action, but what's the sponsoring thought behind it? You probably know this. And the things that I was doing was because I had this sponsoring thought of fear. Like I was scared that I could potentially die.
Right.
And so like whatever energy we're in will continue to attract those events and experiences in our life. So even though I moved across the country and I was doing new things and I thought I was different, I was running the same narrative. Yep, the same program, the same narrative inside. And so what happened is I got worse. So then I started to develop tumors in my ovaries that were cancerous, tumors in both my breasts. And in 2020, I got diagnosed with a brain tumor. And I was just kind of like...
That's wild.
And that was really the hardest moment, because not only was I breaking physically down, but I had walked in at my boyfriend at the time with 2 girls, and so like everything in my life was just broken. My heart was broken, my body, my everything. And I remember going out into my car, and the pivotal moment was I was just sitting there screaming to whatever it is you believe in, and I call it God, and I was just like, I'm done. Like, I will never live this life again. I'm done. Like, I'm done. Like, it's just such an intensity that you make a decision that it's literally a splash in the field of energy. And you're like, this is it. And I called my mom and dad. I'm like, I'm going to go back to work. And they're like, hey, you just got diagnosed with brain tumor. Like, you crazy? But I realized everything I was doing, my whole identity was being unwell.
Right.
Every time I went out, it was to a doctor visit or to an appointment, and I was constantly being told and reaffirmed that I wasn't well. I couldn't even remember what it felt like to be happy. Or my passion. And, I really believe that when the soul dies, the body will follow. And I was in such a sad, low point in my life that
couldn't climb out
at all. And so the only thing that made sense in my mind, which to some people was like, that's crazy, but that brought me joy and purpose was working. And
do you think, like in that moment when you're like describing, you're in your car and you're like breaking down and you're just like, I'm done. Do you feel like something in you just kind of like let go? Like,
absolutely.
Like you're almost like, I'm not listening to this story. Like I'm done. Again. It's almost like I feel, because I've had not as severe moments, but there's been times in my life where something like clicks in. It's like, you don't have to follow this narrative.
No.
And it almost rings so true into your soul that you can like retrain your thoughts in your brain and your body and whatever you want to do. Because you believe it in that moment.
Absolutely. Our brain, when we can feel an emotion with such intensity, our brain takes a snapshot and it stores that as a long-term memory. And there's many people that can remember these moments in their life because it's a greater intensity. It's a greater emotion. And for me, it was anger, right? And so I think a lot of times we think that it's like, if I just think positive, it'll change. Yeah. No, sometimes you get angry and you're like, I'm done with this. Like, do you hear me? But it's that level of intensity that sparks change.
I love that you're saying that though, because I think so many times we say, we're going to tuck our feelings under the rug. We're fine. Women especially are like, I'm fine, smiley, happy, I'm fine. And it's in those moments. For me, it's always been in a dark space. It's never been like happy, clappy, like, oh,
happy, clappy. I love that.
Great, you know what I mean?
No,
like for me, those
sucks.
pivots of change have been in like the darkest times. Yeah. Where it's almost like you're surrendering and you're like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I believe it is that. And speaking of sticking your
buddy.
feelings, he's like, this is heavy. We're gonna go love on them. Thank you, buddy. I started to get sick like a month after my brother attempted suicide. And I'll just share this because I remember walking in, and my dad found him. He was blue. He was gone, and he gave him CPR. He resuscitated him. I was halfway across the country, so by the time I got there, he had a shallow breath. He was in a coma, and I remember walking in and just seeing him completely hooked up to tubes in a coma, and like dropping to my knees and praying and being like, God, just give me what he has. Like, I can take it. I'm strong. And I don't believe that God works like this at all. Like, you never have to make a deal with the divine.
Right.
But I do believe that we can plant seeds into our subconscious mind. And we can do that. And then I think part of my body, I think I created this narrative that if he was going to be okay, I could. And then I'm
trading.
Exactly.
I love that you just even said God doesn't work that way, because I would say
not at all.
I'm like, no, God wants everybody to be happy.
Everybody can be happy. It's a human limiting belief that we have to trade, because that's a human thing. What if I do this, what will you do for me? It doesn't work like that. Like, it's just infinite love. But then I started to, I bring this up because you talk about suppressing emotions, and I suppressed all of that. And I literally developed a disease where my organs were hardening. It was like everything that went inside, that was it was literally hardening me from the inside out. Right. And so that's what happens when women, men, anyone suppresses emotions. Like, the body keeps the score. You store those inside of you. And it may be 1 year, maybe 1 month, it may be 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, but it will show up in some way, manifest in your life as something that potentially is a terrible experience. And that's why it's better to just feel them and talk about them. And the more we talk about it, the more we can understand we don't have to live life like that. We can choose to reprogram. We can choose a new belief system.
I think it's like, I've even had several conversations with my husband here this last year, and there's been times where I'm like, I need to share some things with you because I'm holding him in so much that I'm like physically ill. And I'm like, and I keep telling myself it's not a problem. And if I'm being honest, like, it's a problem. So when because I was like scared, was he gonna judge me? What does he think? What is he gonna say? But when I said it like that, I'm like, but I'm in a space where I'm in so much pain, like, to where I have to get this out.
How did he react?
He was just like, wow, like, he was kind of like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm not. Like, like, what I need to share with you, like, may even end our marriage. I don't know. Like, I was just so scared.
But I commend you. And a lot of the times I ask why, because we create these narratives of how people are going to react when we don't even know. And it sounds like, and it sounds like he met you with like grace and with the ability to listen, and clearly you guys have worked through that. And so that's a beautiful, thank you for sharing that, because I even feel like that's sometimes where, I mean, I don't do it anymore, but I can look at my previous relationships where I didn't say anything, right? Because it was like, be a good girl, these programs.
Don't burden him.
Oh, he's working, and like you
play your role. He plays his role. Like, don't burden
the stage of life. So, but it's not true. And the more we talk about it, the more we can connect, and the more we don't have to live in suffering.
We let this weight off of our shoulders. I believe that when you let these, old stories, or I call them the rules of life, when you kind of like question them, and then you're like, wait a minute. I think I can do it differently. And I actually believe that God, that's how he wants it.
Absolutely.
And he wants you to create that.
And we can change in times of joy and inspiration, or we can change in times of pain and suffering. And for many people, it takes, myself included, enormous amounts of pain in my life. And, first it was getting sick, and then, other tragedies. And
did your brother recover?
So my brother recovered.
Okay.
Thank God. And well, I'll just share with you. I'll tell you the end where it's kind of I'll just finish the story because he's a big part of it. So I make this decision that I'm going to change, that my life is like, I'm done living this. And I say, I'm going to go back to work. And no, it's okay. And so I go through this breakup. This doggy therapy. Thank you, baby. So I wound up going to my brother's house. So thank God he recovered, because he was like a landing base for me after going through this breakup and not knowing, like, at this time I have no job, no money, nowhere to live, and I'm dying. And so, but I have something, and I mean, it looked like I had nothing, but I had this will inside of me to survive. I had this faith, this belief that no matter what the outside world looks like, some way, somehow, I could get better. Yeah, and I think that that's super important just to note to people is that you can't get fooled by the illusions of life. You know, you have to hold a vision in your mind that it can get better, even when all the odds are against you. Yeah, because there is the ability to create and co-create with God. And so I go to my brother's house. I said, I'm going to go back to work. I do what I always do when I'm creating, especially when I'm sick. I go straight to the mall and buy an outfit. Because I'm like, I am creating a job. Yeah, like I always plan. I assign meeting to close because I'm like, my brother's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going shopping. He's like, what is wrong with you? This isn't going to solve it. I'm like, no, it's not solving it. But yeah, but it's allowing me to believe in my future.
Yeah. It's like putting on a costume, a superhero costume. Totally. Like, okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready. And not only that, I believe that faith is action. And I don't care what it is. I don't care what are the steps of action you're taking. If you are acting as if your life is going to get better, God, the universe will respond to you.
Right.
So I go out, I go shopping. I buy I remember, I'm going to still have them, even though they're kind of out of style, but I'm like, I will forever keep these 3 dresses. And 3 days later, literally out of nowhere, I get a call from a guy I worked with 5 years prior in New York being like, Kate, like, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, like, never been better. Like, trying to play it cool. He's like, any chance you're looking for work? And I'm doing one of those
I mean, maybe.
I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird. But like, I'm actually not in New York. I'm in California. He's like, no kidding. This is a role in California. It was a Friday. Can you come in on Monday? And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm freaking out. Like, yes, what time? I hang up. I don't even know what it's for. Finally, I have no idea. I'm just like, I'm going in, I'm getting a job. Like, everything is going to get better. So I wound up figuring out, over the weekend, I go in on Monday, I'm testing for the West Coast correspondent for Sports Illustrated. I'm like, oh my God, this is a dream. And, these are jobs where you usually have an agent and they will submit you, and it's a process. But, it just shows you how God can work.
I think too, when you put, I hate the word manifesting for some reason.
No,
but I do believe there's certain times when you think about something,
absolutely,
and then you take action towards that, doors will open.
100%.
So I'm like, okay, so it's almost scary what you think about. So even for me, when I get negative thoughts about my kids or anything like that, I immediately push those away. I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Not even gonna let that. I'm not even gonna entertain that thought.
I love you for that. I tell my boyfriend, he'll try to put on scary movies. I'm like, okay, when you go to bed, we are going into the subconscious mind. I do not watch or listen to anything I do not want to experience because I believe that I'm powerful in my creation. And it is, manifesting is the trending term now, but it's creating. But that's what it is, and we are that powerful.
Right.
And so it is clear intention and action towards it, and you're believing it, imagining it, that works.
I think when you believe it too, that's when you get a lot of opportunities fall into your lap. Because it's
Absolutely.
something clicks in the brain, and then it's you're like, why are all these doors opening up? And it's almost kind of freaky. My husband's like, you're kind of witchy. I'm like, we don't prefer the term witch, but thank you.
I love it though. I'm like, yes, it's power, right?
Yeah.
I think they called them witches because they understood, especially women, we have this power of our intuition and the ability to tap into ourselves and connect and to imagine. Our brain works differently than men.
Right.
And it is that though. I believe we can do any of that. And that was a perfect example of this. And so I wound up going for this job. I get it. They're like, come back tomorrow, come back. I'm 4 days in and the pandemic hits. And I'm like,
shoot.
Are you freaking kidding me? My dad calls me. He's like, you got 2 options. You're either coming home or I'm coming to get you.
Oh no.
So I go back home, and this was a pivotal moment in my journey. I wound up having the ability that they were going to send equipment to me. I could build a studio at home. But I had another pivotal moment that I just will share because there's multiple. Sometimes it's not one. It's you have to believe in your future. And that can happen one time in the moment of I'm going this way, but then
you got to keep following that.
You have to keep making aligned decisions. And so I'm home and I had this moment where I can either continue taking my medication, but I was a zombie. I couldn't think.
Yeah.
I was a shell of myself, or I could work. And I remember sitting my mom and dad down and being like, listen, I'm going to take this job and I'm done taking medicine. I'm
not me.
I can't do it. So I believe it's possible. And I believe that like people heal all the time. Miracles happen. Why can't I be one of them?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad being like, so we're just going to play like make believe here. And I'm like, I'm like, yes, Dad. And I need you to believe it with me. And he was just like, oh my God, like, what is he going to do? At this point, I'm looking at like 2.5 years left to live. And like,
better not be like this.
No. And it's like, at least if I could be happy now. And so I wound up stopping everything. Every day I'm journaling. I would journal. I lived in like, at this point, I was in Louisville, Kentucky in their house. We wound up moving to a small town in Florida through this process of me healing. Mm-hmm. And I would journal and be like, I live by the beach in California. My husband is a billionaire. We fly around on jets. And I'm writing this like, if you're going to dream, just go for it. That's my dream, right? Like whatever. Yeah. Like that's what I'm going for. And it's funny because like you look at my life now and it's not all of those things, but it's like I'm here in California. My home is something I cry half the time because I'm so grateful. Mm-hmm. And so in the darkest of moments, I share that because you can create, right? You can still create and dream. Absolutely. You have to keep dreaming. You have to. And so anyways, long story short, 10 months passed. My dad's like, we're done doing this make-believe thing. The country's starting to open. You got to go get like,
how were you feeling at that point?
Good. You know, I every day I woke up and I was so grateful to be alive and I loved what I was doing. Yeah. And I really believe that that's the key is like, you know, we talk about enjoy your life, but the gift of being in joy, that is a frequency, the gift of being in love and loving your life and just, you know, I still had, it took a while. Like so one, I'll just share, it's kind of a weird thing, but where this tumor was, it was pushing against my pituitary. So I was lactating. So like I was having these symptoms that are like crazy. You can't really deny them. Yeah, I'm like, I'm doing great. Oh my God, this is so weird. Yeah. Like, I've never had a baby, so I don't know. But I'm like, this is weird. I'm like stuffing my bra for the just for those reasons. And so you know, I think it's also too when you're committing to this, you have to wait for your body to catch up to your mind. You know, you have to wait for your reality to catch up with your mind.
It's like there's a delay.
Yeah, it is. It's like even this, right? Like we planned this a week or 2 weeks ago. And now we're here. Yeah. We waited and now we're here. And like we're in preparation. So the things that we plan today, they don't show up till later. Yeah. And so it's just being patient and knowing. But I wound up going back to the doctor and first thing I did is I got a brain scan and the doctor's looking at me and he's like, what did you do? And I'm like,
how much time had gone by?
10 months. Okay. 10 and a half months almost. And I just stopped thinking about it. No one was telling me that I wasn't well. I was just happy and I was healthy and I loved my life. And he's like, what did you do? It's gone. And I'm like, literally the only thing that came to my mind was, I just fell in love with my life. And he was like, what? And it was like, it was just a shock. Like I get chills. It was just a shock to me as it was to him because I wasn't trying to heal.
I think your thoughts can heal your body, though. I'm a firm believer in that.
Absolutely. We know our thoughts can make us sick. Why can't our thoughts make us well? We know this. And we're seeing, like UC San Diego is studying this. They're showing like what happens in deep states of meditation or imagination or prayer. And it's that. Your thoughts create chemicals in your body and those chemicals can heal you.
I think it's like you can't believe a story just because somebody tells you that. Like I've had so many times in my life, it's like, well, you can't do this. You know, how I was raised, like everything. Even like, I know you came to my last fitness show. People were like, you can't do that. You have 4 kids and you're older. I'm like, watch me. But I know, I love it. But it's like, I just think that the mind is so powerful, but it comes with this, the mind is powerful when you actually like commit and believe that, you know?
Absolutely.
So I think it's like when you kind of like believe that, and then like you said, I love you said, like it takes time. Like you think about a diet, people diet for a week and they're like, nothing happened. You're like, you need to diet for like 6 months, you know, like wait till you see results, and you were seeing results because you were starting to feel better.
Yes.
So then you're like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this despite like what the doctors were really telling you.
Yes. It's just at some level, like, just like, I know it's different, but it's still fundamentally the same when people say you can't do that. You're like,
but can I?
Yeah, but this is the only person that gets to decide what happens in my life is me. And the only person in you is you, and anyone watching this, like, you get to decide. Nobody can tell you what you can do. You get to choose that. And so it was just a choice. And, you know, I wound up going, getting all the other scans, and every single thing in my body had healed. Everything. And I was just like, Willy Wonka, like golden ticket, like oh my God, like this is absolutely
Did you change anything in like your diet or?
Yeah,
just...
well, I had a good diet.
Mm-hmm.
I would share, like, I watched this documentary. It was pretty pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so they look at people in 120 countries that heal, and they have nothing in common, like different genes, different food, different lifestyle, different everything.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these people heal from like stage 4 cancer, radical remission, autoimmune. And they found 9 things in common. And 2 of them were physical, meaning they radically changed their diet. They like were cautious of what they were eating, organic, and they switched to homeopathic medications. Things that have healed for thousands of years. And the other 7 things were metaphysical, spiritual. They started believing something higher than them. They asked for help. They had purpose. And they had a will to live. And I watched that documentary and I was like, oh my God. Sometimes we're called to be the person that can be an example, right? Like I believe Jesus was, I think I'm trying to remember the verse, 14:12, I think in John, where he's like, I'm the first of many brothers and sisters to come. And I don't think he was looking for followers. I think he was looking for leaders. I think he was looking for other people that could show what is possible. And sometimes we're called in our life to be the first. And sometimes we just need to see something is possible. And it just takes one inkling of something to develop a stronger faith inside. So watching that was like pivotal. I was like, okay, why not me? Like, why not this? And that builded that strength. And
so when you kind of watch that, like, I do love what you just said, how like I believe that what keeps people going is purpose and a calling.
Absolutely.
And impact. Like if you know, like right before we did this podcast, so you're like, I just want to contribute. But I actually believe that's why we're here.
100%.
And if we can grow, we will always impact more. I'll share this quick story. There was one time when I wanted to like quit everything, quit my brand, like felt like I was being a selfish mom, all these crazy things. Literally like felt like at my lowest of lows, like on the floor crying, like this is stupid, I should give up. And it was like this clear, voice came down and just said like, you would be selfish to quit. Do you know who you're meant to impact? And it was like almost like in that moment where I was like, and I always get like teary when I share that for some reason. So it was like I accepted a calling. And I was like, okay. And when I did that, my life took off. And I was like, all I had to do was say yes. And God's going to keep opening up doors. So I think there's like a lot of power in just kind of like surrendering and like accepting that calling. I really do believe like you wake up every day and it's like, I mean, I love my kids. Like I feel called to be a mom, but I'm like, I feel like I have like a bigger calling. And so I think that is important for everybody to understand that not everybody on this planet, I believe, has a calling and you have to choose to accept it.
I thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Sorry, I cry all the time when I do podcasts.
Oh my God, no, I love it. Well, I mean, this is real and this is life, and this, like, what you're saying is the purpose as to why we have the gift to be here.
Right.
And it's not meant to be taken lightly. So I feel it too. And thank you for sharing that. And I agree. It's like, there is a calling put inside of us, and it will keep calling.
It's like, it'll keep nudging.
It will keep, and I'm telling you, like, my biggest thing I've learned is answer it quickly, because it will continue to get your attention in all the ways that it can until you remember why you're here. And I think a lot of times it takes forgetting everything we think we are so we can remember who we actually are inside and why we're here and why, that feeling you feel in your heart, like it's no accident. It is totally on purpose for your purpose. And so, and oh my God, it's like crazy for me to think about that you even had that moment, because I look at you and like, I talk to my mom about you. I talk to my boyfriend about you in the most beautiful way, because I see you as this unbelievable role model, because I grew up where, like I love my mom more than anything, but she's the best mom in the world, but I didn't have anyone that showed me that both was possible. And I just grew up with this limited view of reality and these boxes of like, this is what you should be in this. And I felt very selfish being like, I'm not really sure if I want kids right now. I want to focus on my career, or if I do, then what happens? And so like, even seeing you compete, it's like, oh my God.
Like, it's funny too, though, like everything in life, it's like we have these stories, and I always say like time's irrelevant. It's what you choose to prioritize. So if you're like, I need to focus on my career, it's like, maybe for a season. And then it's like, I'm going to shift gears, and now I need people to help me manage this, and I'm going to come over here. And it's kind of this like toggling, balancing act. I think that people think I'm like a crazy workaholic, and I'm like, no, I had seasons of that.
Yeah.
And I decided a long time ago when I wanted to be a mom that I also I had a calling, I had a purpose.
Yeah.
And I love my children, but that was not my purpose.
Yeah.
That was like a bonus, a gift, and a blessing to teach me.
I love that.
So tell me, okay, so everything was healed, and then...
Well, then I didn't share this, but right before I had, on my 30th birthday, I was at Machu Picchu, and I was sitting there, and they say it's one of the most like spiritual places on the planet. And I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time. I was incredibly sick. Like even just traveling over there, it was so hard on my body. And he was off doing his thing. It was not a healthy relationship, but it was all I had at the time. So of course, like we cling to things that are familiar, that will maybe safe. Yeah. And I remember praying there, being like, why am I here? Please use me. Just use me. Like I'm listening, like please. And I had this conversation, I'm like waiting, like no response. Yeah. And like, hello, this is like, come on, you got my email?
Yeah, shooting star.
Anything, come on. And a few hours later, I go to dinner, and my boyfriend at the time, my ex is like looking at me, and he's like, my 30th birthday. He's like, I think you should go home. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I just think you should go home. And the biggest lesson in retrospect is that we pray. And it shows up in ways we least expect it. And so you have to be conscious and open to how is God responding to you? How is it showing up? And everything inside of me should have gone home. Yeah. But I was like, we're going to Brazil tomorrow.
No, I'm waiting for my sign.
Yeah, because my birthday, we're going to go to Brazil.
No, you're not listening to the signs in your body.
Exactly. My body's like, traumatized. Yeah. So we fly to Brazil the next day. And here we are, like in front of Christ the Redeemer. Like the guy I was just talking to. Yeah. And my ex was super tall, and he's putting on this tank top, and as he does, his elbow comes down and hits me in the nose with my sunglasses, shatters my nose in 2 places.
Oh no.
And it was like,
you're like, if that wasn't a loud enough sign.
It was like, literally, and they joke, a punch in the face.
Oh geez.
Wake up. Yeah. And I'm like crying and screaming. I go back, and we wound up leaving the trip early. I come back here. They're like, yeah, your nose is broken. Like, this is like, we got to send you to an ENT. We got to get MRIs, blah, blah, blah. But this was all right before like the pandemic hits. So long story short, I never got it fixed because COVID hit and everything was just crazy. So every day I showed up on camera, and I would like learn the angle that would like make it less broken.
Is it healed on its own?
Oh no, it was like sinking in.
Oh no.
But there was nothing I could do. And honestly, at the state that I was in, like I had so many terrible things happening in my body. It was like the least of my worries.
I'm like, fine, just tell me.
I'm like, my nose is broken. They're like, Kate, look straight on camera. I'm like, can't do it. Looks really broken that way. Like I'm turning this way. So I like figured. So I came back though, and I shared that because I got all my scans done. Everything's healed. And then the last person I see is my ENT. And he's like, girlfriend, like we got to get this fixed. This is like sinking in. This is not good. So he sends me to a plastic surgeon here. And I walk in, and this doctor is like, well, we could do this, and we could do this, and like we could do this. And I got so freaked out. I was like, this is what I look like. I don't want to look different. This is what I look like. Like I work on camera. This is me. Like I'm healthy. Like I have a shot at life. Like come on. So I wound up going to a doctor out in New York that my cousin told me about. He worked in like trauma specialists. I go see him. He's like, okay, you have 45-minute. We're going to fix the bridge. Super simple. You'll be back on camera in 2 weeks. And I'm like, let's get it done now, right? Sponsoring thought is like, that jerk, I got to get this done as soon as possible in my life, right? But like I share this because it's like, why are we taking action from what place and energy? And even though it needed to be done, I was carrying so much anger into this operating room, which I don't know if this is what caused what happened next, but I can't help but think that I create a lot, so might as well be aware. Yeah. So I go in for surgery. I don't wake up 45 minutes later. I wake up 6.5 hours later. And I wake up and I'm screaming. Oh no. Because I was laying on the operating heating pad so long, I had burns down my back. So I'm like screaming about burns. I wound up going to the burn clinic in New York. I'm all the while like completely in shock. What happened? Yeah. And so my mom's calling them. They're texting us. We're sending photos. They're like, okay, we'll see you on Monday, like for the like post-op. And I'm like, what is going on? All while like I had just worked the Super Bowl. Tom Brady had just won. I'm prepping for the biggest interview of my life. And I'm like, I have to be back on camera in like 10 days. Like, what is going on? So I go in, and I'll never forget my mom's face, right? Like, moms just have a look and it says it all. And they take my cast off, and my mom looks at me like in this shock of like, what the F happened? And I remember them pulling a mirror, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like, who is that? And you see, I was under the operating table. I was there for 6.5 hours because the doctor decided to like take ribs and sew them in and shave my nose and put in an implant. And I look in the mirror, and I'm like, oh my God, my iPhone didn't recognize me, categorized me as a new person, and I lost my mind.
Did he make it sound like it was going to be like a simple procedure?
Oh yeah, like it was like there was no agreeing to any cosmetic changes. It was just this very simple thing.
Yeah.
And I still to this day don't know. Like, everyone's like, did you go after him? And I'm like, I was not in the state of I was not okay. And I learned when I was sick, like, we think we're our job, you know, we think we're our relationship, we think we're where we live. Like, we build this identity on all these things we think we are that we're not. But the last thing most of us think we are is this body. You know, we look in the mirror and we're like, that's me. And it was the hardest lesson for me to try to remember who I was inside, because I looked different. And people are like, this is what you look like what's wrong with you? But I'm like, you know, I haven't done anything since then. I visualized, and it healed, and it's different. But for 18 months, I wore a hat. I would like cry and shake. I was down to 85 pounds. Like, I was crazy. I was literally crazy.
Did the doctor ever tell you like what happened? They just got in there?
He said he went in there, and there was so much like damage that he was doing his best. And like, it also doesn't really make sense, because there were things that like, I don't like, were cosmetic, like implants and things like that. Like that, it had nothing, like shortening, like it had nothing to do with it. I don't know why it happened, but why he did that, but I can look at the lesson, and I can see what God was teaching me, and I could see it was like, I was so consumed in thinking that I was this body, and I was all of these things, and I wasn't. And so, you know, like, people ask like, oh my God, have you healed your body? I'm like, well, it was, you know, me and divine, me believing, but the divine coming in. But the mind is the most powerful thing. Like, I try to heal my body all day long. The mind, I mean, that was like, I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live. And the only thought I had, literally the only thought I had, was just kill yourself. Just end it all. Just end it all. And I would just run and jump in my mom and dad's pool over and over and over, trying to shock myself. And I wound up going to, and they wanted to give me medication, but because I had almost lost my brother to a suicide attempt, which he was a veteran, so he took all the pills from the VA and used that to attempt. I was so scared that I already wanted to die that, like, God forbid I took something that could throw me off a little bit. I might. So I was like, I have to learn to meditate. And I went to my first like Joe Dispenza event, and I went to 10 in a row, and just was learning how to disconnect from this world and try to imagine a new future. And so for 18 months, I did that.
So you healed your body, but then you were almost like back in this like prison, like after what had happened, you're thinking I'm on top of the world, and then it's like life comes and you're like, really?
Yeah.
And so then you have to almost like retrain your mind and go, it's like all over again. Even though you had healed everything, but you just, like you said, you were having like intrusive thoughts and like you weren't you.
I was having a total identity crisis of like, what happened to me? Yeah, like I had just healed, and then the worst thing that at that point could have happened to me happened, and it was like, how the heck do I overcome this? And that led to these meditating and learning about, okay, how do I get control of my thoughts? How do I learn how to be still? How do I rewire my mind? How do I accept myself? And it took 18 months of doing this, and literally wearing a hat. I disappeared from social media. I never went on camera. I never went back to work. I was like, I'm done. I don't want anyone to ever see me again. Until one day I was at this event, and there were these 3 girls there, and they were beautiful, like 16, 18, and 20, beautiful girls. But they didn't see that. And they were talking to me because it was a small group, and they were like, they all had body image issues, and they were all hurting themselves to look a certain way. And they were like, you probably don't get it. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I feel like an absolute prisoner in my body. But I was like, in that moment, how can I tell them to love themselves when I can't even love me? And I had never told anyone what happened after that. I made all new friends and I didn't want anyone to judge me. So the first people I told, and I said in that moment, like, look, this isn't who we are. Like, we're in here. And like, let's make this pact together. I'm going to take my hat off, and you guys, let's love ourselves for who we actually are, the spirit inside of this body. And it was like, just like going to the doctor, it was like 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm like trying to get a hold of my mom and dad. I'm like, oh my God, dad, call me, call me.
Another surrender moment.
I said, exactly, total full surrender. And then what follows surrender is absolute bliss. And finally my dad calls me after like 30 minutes, and I'm like, Dad, oh my God. And I can hear my dad's voice, and it's like, you know, when you get that call, you just know something's wrong. And I'm like trying to tell my dad, and I'm like, Dad, what's wrong? And he was calling to tell me that my brother went to bed and never woke up. Oh, no. And it was like this high again, hit with the absolute just worst case scenario ever. And he didn't take his life. He suffered from PTSD, and he had a hard time sleeping. I think eventually his body just shut down. And it was in that moment, it was so pivotal of like, okay, I have a really big decision right now. Like, I can let this get the best of me, but I know what happens. Like, that's disease and despair, or I can do everything in my power to use this to move forward and to try to help other people. And that'll be 2 years ago in July. So it was this up and down of learning how to cope and accept myself. And like you said,
brother?
My best friend. It was just the two of us.
How far apart were you guys in age?
18 months.
Oh, wow.
So a year apart. And yeah, he was the reason I moved out to California, because I was in New York. He's like, come out here, Kate. And then I lived with him for a while, and it was like, yeah, he's my best friend. And that's been the hardest thing, you know, and it taught me a lot of lessons. Like, I went through, after he tried to commit suicide, like trying to save him, all to learn that like, I never could have, like that God had this journey for him. And it was his destiny, and it was his soul. And like, in so many ways, like, you know, the first time I ever got in front of anyone again was at a service, and I didn't even think about what I looked like. It didn't even matter. It was like, what a
perspective
shallow
on life.
Oh my God. I'm like, why am I caring about what my nose looks like? But it was so real, right? Like, trauma is trauma. And like, how I felt in that moment, and being like, somebody changed me because I wasn't good enough in these stories I made. But it was the biggest lesson of just like, my God, life is so precious. And it was that moment too of being like,
you're like, life's so much bigger.
So much bigger in this calling of like, you know, my boyfriend was like, because when I'm getting a new one, he's like, you have to tell people your story. And I was like, I don't want to go out there. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want anyone to judge me. Like, it's so painful putting yourself out there. You know, it's like, if you're not good enough, they hate you. If you're doing well, they hate you. And like, maybe they love you somewhere in between, but I had so much pain. And I just remember him being like, you're so selfish. Like, you have information that can help people. And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, you're a douchebag. And I was like, what? And I was like, oh my God, I guess I am kind of being like, what? Who even says that? Like, what do you mean? But he was like trying to pattern him up. What an asshole, Kate. Like, and I'm like,
because we tell ourselves these things, and it's like, I always feel like when you like talk yourself out of something, you know. And I'm sure your brother, like, as unfortunate as it was, like, I'm sure he would want you to do this.
Oh my God, he's like, absolutely.
He's probably with you a lot of times.
Always. Like, and it's like the signs that he's there, the way he shows up, all of that. I see him everywhere. You know, it's the reason I moved to Laguna Beach. It's like our favorite place in the world. And I have so many memories here with him, and I see him everywhere. And it's that overcoming your own limiting beliefs, overcoming whatever's happened to you in your life, and being like, what can I do from this? How can I be of service? How can I help others? Like, why did this happen? It's either all for nothing, or it's all perfectly orchestrated for a divine plan that is part of your purpose and part of your calling, like you said. And it's just being conscious to that.
So did you, after this happened, this is when you had met Peter? And
then 2 months after my brother passed.
When did your life turn? Because now you're in another pit. You're in a peak and you're in a pit. So then, what was the next chapter?
It was like blindly moving forward. Of like my friends just being like, you got to keep going. Like, we're gonna take you here. We're gonna go to Burning Man. We're gonna go here, and me just saying yes, like super brokenhearted. And I wound up. I was actually on my way to Nepal, and I met this like Tibetan monk that was like, come to Nepal, we're going to do this thing for your brother at our monastery. And I had this intuitive feeling as I'm halfway there in New York, leaving the next morning to go to Ibiza. Like this strong, and I say this because it's like, I believe like prayer is us talking to God, the divine, and intuition is him talking back. And it's like, if you can listen to that. And I had this moment to go there. So I wound up changing my plans last minute, calling my mom, being like, we're not going to Ibiza, I'm so sorry. She's like, okay, honey. And I walk in and I meet my boyfriend now. He's the first person there. And little by little, I just kept saying yes. Like faith just, I was scared, like absolutely scared. Of like where I'm going and what's going to happen in my life. But it's like you said, it was like the more I was just
leaning into it,
like all of a sudden I had a dinner, and the founder of a company called Mind Valley, the largest personal development, is right next to me, and he's talking to me, and he's inviting me to come to one of his events to see if I like it. And it was just like so divine that one by one, like doors were opening, doors that I couldn't even see before. We're all there, and it was like somebody hit the green light, and it was like, and it was just faith of just, regardless of how scary it is, regardless if you know, the unknown is the scariest place, but it's also where all the miracles exist. And so it took that, and about a year ago, it was very quickly. It was like 2 months after my brother passed, I met my boyfriend. Then I started meeting people. By the end of next year, I was traveling, or the following year, I was traveling around the world, going to these events, then getting asked to speak. And I remember saying, like, if I could just do something for my brother. And I literally spoke. It was his 1 year anniversary, and I spoke on a stage there in front of 2,000 people. I was able to share this. And it's just continuing of like, when I tell people about my journey, they're like, what did you do? So I wound up creating a course. Just not to like, I've been putting so much of it on YouTube because
it's not about your course.
So what I learned is it's all about mind body alignment. That's what I call it. So, you can have thoughts of like, I'm going to create this amazing life, but if you can't get your body into action to do it, then it's not going to happen. Or you can do all the work that it takes, but if you're believing the whole time that it's never going to work, it won't hurt.
Then it won't work.
So the whole course is just about learning how to rewire yourself, learning how we're programmed from the moment we're born, where we grew up, what our parents taught, what institutions taught us. And our brain is like this computer system where they put programs in and we run it. So it's first getting conscious of that, and then knowing that you have the power to reprogram yourself. You truly have the power inside of you to create anything.
I feel like I love this, and I genuinely believe this, and I want to go back to the one principle that I think is very important in this, and you said it earlier in the show, is like, it's not an overnight thing.
No.
And it's also a delayed from like the belief, the work you're doing inside your mind, then it's a delay. And I think it's important for people to understand that, because they want to go to these workshops and feel happy clappy. And I'm like, no, you literally have to do almost like everything in your brain that you're trained. It's like you have to make a daily conscious effort to do the exact opposite of that.
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, that's how, like, at least for me, that's how I've retrained certain patterns and belief, is I'm like, I refuse to believe that. But even though I accepted that I refuse to believe that, I still have to take action to reprogram it. I don't believe this food's going to do that for me, so I'm going to eat this.
Exactly. It's like, if you have a virus in your computer, you could be like, I don't believe the computer's working right. Great. Are you going to delete the virus and reprogram it so it functions properly? And that's us. So it's true, but I love that you emphasize this, because like life is a game of faith, right? And it's you have to believe it and hold the vision and connect to that vision every single day, and don't let anyone speak down on you. Like, I mean, there's stories, I refer to the Bible just because I grew up with that, and there's stories where, they said there can be no doubt in this room for a miracle to take place. And it's like, I believe in having a belief buddy, I call it, like somebody that will believe in you and with you, and understanding that it takes time, but it can happen out of nowhere. Like just like that, a phone call, you run into someone on the street, you suddenly get pregnant, whatever it is you're desiring in your life, but it takes an unwavering will of belief and continuously holding that vision.
I love how you said green lights too.
Because
I always talk to Garrett, people like, look, how quickly we kind of did everything, and I was like, it's almost like we just kept hitting the green lights. But it's like, it's not one thing. Like you'll get that call, you'll get that date, you'll get that dinner opportunity. And then it's like, there's no such thing as like your big shot. It's like a lot of little big shots. And there's some that are bigger than others.
Yes.
Like, whoa, that took me like 6 lights down the road.
Yes, but it's consistency.
Yeah.
It's consistently sticking with the plan that you believe you're being called to be on, regardless if it's scary, regardless if it's an unknown, regardless if it's taking more time,
Right.
you know, but it also too, it's like, what is our relationship with time? And like, I even try to include things in like when I'm praying or when I'm, you know, creating affirmations, like, thank you for showing up quickly in a way that like is the most gracious and unexpected way. Put me in awe, right? Like these things we can also even create in our life of speed. I believe like, it's like, it can come out of nowhere, but it's holding that vision and being in the energy to receive it is so important because sometimes we spend all of this time to create something and then we fall out of it and we're in doubt. And it's like, I like to refer to it like if you order something online, like you go online and you like order this beautiful package and it's like, okay, you have to be home to sign for this. And you trust, right? You like, if you go on and order something very nice and expensive, they're like, we're going to show up, you're going to sign for this package, but you only order it once. Like you go on and then you just trust that it's on its way to you. And then you got to be home for it to sign. And I think what happens is like we order something, like we pray, we put it out there, we set an intention, and then we're like, is it working? Like, okay. And then we fall out of it. We get into doubt. And then that's like just not being home. So God's over here like, oh my God, it's like, I'm ready, but like, you're not in the energy to receive it. Why did you stop believing what I've already packaged up and I'm bringing to you?
I was gonna say,
come on.
Like, I'm bringing you this gift or this blessing. Like, just take it.
Exactly. It's like, there's so much going on behind the scenes we never see. It's like, you go to a Broadway show. All we see is like the main set, but there are so many people behind the scenes. And that is like God at work, constantly moving and shifting and positioning. And act 2 is like, it's going to be amazing, but you got to stick around for the show. And I think so many people just get jaded and they fall out of faith and they get into doubt and fear creeps in. And it's like,
I tell you, I'm like, how many times do you think God just like handed you like something on a silver platter, but you didn't believe enough in yourself. And so you didn't even like, he's like, literally, I just like laid this in your lap.
Yes. But it's true. And it's like, you either are in faith and in love and in grace and you can receive it, or you miss it completely. It's like your vision can't even see it was ever there.
So how does it, so with your program that you created, are you currently doing coaching or how does that work?
You know, I have some one-on-one, but right now I'm getting ready for a big event. I'm going to be gone for a month. So I've kind of like paused one-on-one, but the idea is just to continue to have just a space where people can go. I'm also building out something which I call the database of miracles, because there are so many magical things that happen every single day. But if you go online and you get a diagnosis or something bad's happening and you Google, like, you're going to get the worst case scenario. Yeah, it's the worst. So I'm collectively working on that as well, where it's like, there's a place that people can go and just find that hope exists. And it's actually happening every moment of every day all around us, where they can go and they can check like, wow, I can believe there is a good story. There is that. And just creating this community that allows people to believe in one another.
So that's your bigger dream, is to kind of create like a community.
Yeah.
So tell me, where are you going to travel for a month?
But I'm going to Estonia. So it's something called Mind Valley University.
Okay. So I've heard a little bit of Mind Valley University. Tell me really quickly, like, what is that?
It's so cool. So it is 3 weeks. Some people come the entire time. Usually people come for a week. It's for kids, it's for adults, so it's very family oriented because it's based in summer. So the concept is like, most of us go to school, some continue on to like college, and then people stop learning. Yeah, it's like, unless you're an avid reader or learner, you kind of just stop and like you're stuck in those old programs. So it's teachers from all around the world, some of the top hypnotherapists in the world, breath work, there's movement exercises, there's things like astral projection. The kids are learning about spirituality and being able to learn and connect with themselves, right? So they can self-regulate. So it's all of these teachers from all around the world. So I'm actually hosting it, I'm speaking there, and then I'll also be doing interviews. So just finding the stories that will help inspire other people to believe in their future and the dreams put inside of them. So it's a long event, but it's going to be really fun. And, Mind Valley is the largest personal development company in the world. And they have an app, and there's really something for anybody in there. They have things geared towards men, towards women, towards children. And it's really just, personal development. Like, how can you continue to become the best version of yourself? And like you said, life is chapters and stages. So what is the best version of me in this stage of my life? Yeah.
It's funny how you say, like, we go to, high school, college, whatever, and then we, like, stop learning. It sounds bad, but I like think about some of my high school friends. I'm like, you're still doing the same shit you were in high school. I'm like, you didn't evolve.
Yeah.
I'm like, life didn't stop at 18 years old. It didn't stop at 22 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, so it's crazy that we do kind of fall into this pattern of like, these are your narratives, these are your stories, you should be happy, you hit all the checks in the boxes, and like, you should live happily ever after.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
No, and it's a program by society. But I mean, you can look at evolution. Like if you are not if life is not evolving, it doesn't even have to be a human being, but us as well, it's dying. Like you're either growing or you're dying. You have to evolve. And so it's for us too. And there's so much beauty in that, right? Like there's so much beauty in being like, what does the next version of me look like? What does the next version of you look like? How are you going to inspire yourself and others? And you don't even realize what you're doing. I think so many times we think like, not everybody, but I want a big purpose and I want to change the world. And what people don't realize is taking the time to better themselves directly impacts every single person around you.
It's not being selfish. It's like I remember when Garrett and I were not doing great in our relationship, and I was like, I have to work on me. Like, that was my biggest thing. It's like, I need to build me. I need to work on me. And that's actually what sparked me to like start my business and everything. But it was like, I had to really like look inwards. It's like, okay. And it's in those moments when you were like, I got to work on me. That's, I believe, when you like all of a sudden see a bigger impact. You see a calling. And it's like, you can't go out and be like, I need to help you, I need to help you, I need to help you. You're like, no. If you be the example, or you have the story, your story is what then impacts.
Absolutely. And we're always looking for like, how do we get better outside of us? And I think too, when we say I'm going to work on me, it's a lot of internal reflection, right? It's like, everyone says like the cave you fear holds the treasure you seek. And like, this to me is our treasure chest. Like right here, all the gold is in here. It's all waiting for us to go into our heart and to understand more of who we are and why we're here. But it takes time, and it takes a narrative switch of being like, because the world will say you're selfish, and it's how?
But I will say, like, because like I think when you can put that time into yourself, like something in the ego breaks, and you discover more about yourself.
Yes.
Like one of my biggest shifts was like when I was doing those competitions. People were like, "Why are you doing it?" I'm like, I don't really know right now, but I'm committing. And it was like crazy, like so many little pieces that I learned about my body, and it just became like almost like kind of broke down the ego. And I was like, I love this. And so I felt like almost like when you can do that, and I was working on me, but I just felt like in doing that, I became a bigger person. And in becoming a bigger person, then who can I inspire? Who can I impact?
Absolutely.
So I think it's like, I think when you recognize that, though, you're kind of, it's like, for me, it's like a balance. I'm like, I have time for me, but then I'm like, very into my family and that. So then I have like dedicated time to my family. And I'm a firm believer in like, you can work on you, even no matter how busy you are. If you're a mom listening to this or whatever, and you're like, well, I don't have time for me, I barely got a pedicure. I do believe that if you work on you, whether it's personal development, whether it's like even something as simple as working out every day, it will have a direct impact on people that you love and others in your community. So.
Absolutely. And like I said it before, but what an incredible role model, right? To your girls, to your family, to anyone viewing you. Like I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, it's possible, right? Like you have no idea how many women are looking at you being like, oh my God, right? And I'm sure
don't really like me.
Yeah, you know what? But it's like,
I'm not allowed to do these things.
I know, but you know what? Like hurt people, and it's hard sometimes for other people to see things and want that so badly and not know how it's possible, or even how to get there, right? And so that usually shows up in mean words or mean comments, and when I see that, it's like that's when I'm like, oh God, please, like send them more love, because it's just the absence of love, right? Pain is the absence of love, darkness is the absence of light. But I love that you do that. I love that you're sharing that too, because that like inspires me even more to be like, okay, what are the ways? I mean, I started seeing how much you started working out. I'm like, 5 days a week, let's go. Like
I'm trying to taper down.
I'm not kidding. But I was like, wow, if she can do that, why can't I do that? Like, why can't
it's like sharing stories. It's like, we don't have time, we don't have time.
Exactly. And now I'm like, this woman is such an incredible role model. Like the business, the family, the time for yourself, the way you take care of yourself, the way you show up in the world, that I'm like, okay, whatever excuse I had is not good enough because it's possible. Yeah. But I'm not kidding you. It like shifted my life.
I always think too, though, you have to understand like your why. So like, anybody like who would watch my journey, I'm like, but I had a very like, for me it was like I gained all this weight, I had a DVT, I had all these like things that made me question, like just maybe had a more appreciation for the body and life.
Yeah.
So that, and then part of it was like, I was like, I'm actually fairly introverted. I hate speaking on stages. And I was like, what if I just get on stage in a bikini with my ass out? Like,
I love that.
It's like,
screw fear.
Yeah. So I did it for, certain reasons. So anytime somebody's like, well, I want to do this, I'm like, well, you got to really understand your why you're doing it.
I think that's a really good point.
But I love like hearing your story, and I'm like, I knew you had a good story. That's why I was like, I need you on the podcast. But I think it's so important that you keep sharing it, because I guarantee everybody who's listening to this is like, I need to write this down. I need to write this down. Like you had so many like good, like little, I call them golden nuggets. So I'm like, that's good. That's good. Like I just want to sit here and like take more.
I know.
Like my camera guy's like flying this down.
I know. I'm like,
we're still going.
I was like, was that a 40? Was that a 50? What was that? Well, I think it's just, thank you for your patience. I just get so passionate because it's like anything that you experience that's amazing. You just want to share people. And there's so many people that are stuck in this life, and you just want to be like, it's possible. I don't know how yet, but just start with believing it. Just start with keeping your mind open to a possibility. I always say, God, put me in awe. Because sometimes I don't know what it looks like or what I'm creating, and I'm just like, put me in awe. Just surprise me. Like, you know me, you know what's best for me. And there's always a possibility for change. It's just reminding people of that.
I always tell people, I'm like, if you're stuck in a story or narrative, like literally say, is this true?
Yeah.
Like I know it sounds weird, but like that's been something that's helped me so much with how I was like raised and like my culture and like everything I've gone through. I get to this really like dark place, and I'm like, wait, I can get out of this. And I just ask myself, is this true? So even if you guys listening, if you started with that simple question, if you're like in a place of like darkness and you have these running stories, like ask yourself, is this true? And I love the other point you made when you're like, if I'm going to dream big.
Yes,
like,
go for it.
So I tell Gary all the time, I go, that is how we got this house. So just so you know, like we were at a Tony Robbins event.
Oh, I know.
It's like, he was the first person that introduced me to this, and he was like, write down, like, you want a unicorn?
Write it down.
I was like, I don't know if unicorns exist.
Maybe a unicorn company?
Yeah, like, I don't know. But
why not?
I was like, this house, probably 7 years ago when we were at this event, I was like, this would be like my house when I retire. Like this life, like this, I'm like, I almost felt like selfish for like even wanting it. That's what's so crazy. I felt
crazy.
I felt like
well, that's a program.
Yeah, and I literally that event was really cool. It broke me in a lot of ways. But I was like, they said like write down and dream big, and I was like, I'm gonna have that house in the next like 5 years.
Oh my God, I love this.
We ended up getting a house 2 doors, or two houses down from this one.
Okay.
Within the next 6 months of going to that event. And I was like, because this was like my dream neighborhood. But I was like, but this is my house. And I would go here and like, oh, it's sold. And I'm like, no, that's my house.
Like,
that's my
y'all are
house.
in my house.
Yeah, I was like, no, you need to get out. And I genuinely am a firm believer of entertaining options. Because again, like, I think that when you entertain options, God opens doors.
Massive doors.
Like how we got into this house, even our realtor was like, you guys have some kind of superpower. Like how everything just fell in by the simple question. I'm like, I number one, I don't take no very well.
Yeah, I love that.
And number two, I was like, but can we? Like I just kept coming back, like entertaining options. Like, because there's a lot of faith, but there's a lot of like logistics. I'm like, okay, but we're telling ourselves no. But like, let me reach out to different lenders. Let me talk to this person. Let me talk to this person. And literally, when I just asked why, or like, can I have this? Like, the cards aligned, and like all of a sudden, like it was like one night they were like, yeah, we've never had this kind of like creative financing mix with da 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 da. The house is yours, and not only that, like we ended up like flipping it, like, and selling that, like everything just like perfectly lined up. Like I was like,
unwavering will. Unwavering will.
I was like, cool.
That is amazing. I love that story. That's holding the vision,
right?
And dreaming big. I love the word imagine. I don't know if you've heard this, but if you break the word imagine down, it says, I'm a genie. Like you're the genie. Like there is nothing outside of you. It's you remembering that power you're talking about is inside of you.
Right.
And with enough determination and unwavering will, like God will find a way. Like you
gotta do the work.
You're not like sitting there waiting. It's just like, but you take faith as action. Like I said, you take the steps. You actively believe.
Right.
And then boom, like dream house.
Yeah. You're like
good job.
Like it's cool. Like that it all happened, but it wouldn't have happened if I didn't like entertain that that's let go of the story of this is our house when we retire and entertain like, no, what if it's our house right now?
Yeah, and being creative with it.
Yeah, and being creative. Yeah. So, but
that's an amazing story. Yeah, I love that.
It's fun though. I genuinely feel very like in tune with you. I love that you're here sharing this message, and I think that you need to share it more. But I think more people need to give people permission to do this because it is possible. Yeah. It is. I genuinely believe that we're capable of so much more in life. Like we really are, but I love the whole principle of like not retraining your brain, but like, what did you say? Reprogramming.
Rewiring it. Rewiring it.
But it doesn't happen overnight.
No, and it's just consciously making a decision every day on who you want to be and the life you want to live. Yeah. And I always say like, everything is possible when you believe in possibility. Right. You know, realistic is just an expectation of a belief system you put on your life, you know, and it's different for everybody. That's why everything's realistic. So if you can get rid of the limiting beliefs, if you can be open to change and be creative with it and play with it, right? Like realizing like, this is my life. Yeah. Like, oh my God, what a gift to be alive. And what does the best life look like? And not worry if other people think it's too much. Or like you said, like, oh, I was feeling guilty for the house. Screw it. This is your life. I tell Gary all the time too, though, because we'll get busy with kids and life and we're human, right? I always tell people, I'm like, if you're feeling sad and depressed, I just tell myself, like, remind yourself you're human. Like, you're emotional. Yeah, you're human. You feel guilty. You're human. Yeah. So it's like we're built and we have all these emotions, but gratitude has helped me in those moments of feeling like I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm a shitty mom, I'm not being a good wife, we're not connecting. I literally tell Gary all the time, I was like, because he'll be venting with work and whatever, and I said, okay, I need you to take a pause. And I say, I want you to look at our life maybe 10 years ago, and if you could take a peek of who we, not just like what we've built, but who we are. Yeah. Would you not just kind of pinch yourself and be like, what am I bitching about right now? Oh my God.
So whenever he gets in a funk or I get in a funk, I'm like, I just take us back to this place of gratitude, and it kind of like melts the fear a little bit. Yeah. And then it makes you like almost refocus like on the mission.
I think that is like the biggest takeaway, because at any moment we can go back to gratitude, right? Yeah. And like when we're in that, God will give us more things to be grateful for. Like,
because you can create more when you're like in this. If you're like oh, I've got so much stress, like stress is never going to go away. No. So it's like, if you can focus on that, it's like, okay, it's like more manageable. You're like, hey, we got shit to do. We got to keep the boat going.
Absolutely. And like always going back to that, because gratitude is being in your heart, right? When we operate from here in love with life, in gratitude for all that we have, I truly believe, and I can speak firsthand, like we will be blessed. Like, you know, like life will change around you to match the energy that you're in. Right. And it all starts with us. You know, the world is just responding to who we are and who we're being. Right. So if we can show up in gratitude, I mean, that is the most beautiful. I'm gonna try that on Peter. Where were you 10 years ago?
Yeah, Peter, it's like you literally like reflect, like
even a year ago.
Like who are you? Yeah. Look how far you've come. And you're like, okay, because I think I was reading this book. It's I can't remember the name of it, but it's like, people get so focused on they're like not there, and you're like, but like we've done so much, like reflect on the work that you've done.
Yeah, but we're so fixated on where we aren't. That we totally the gap in pain, maybe. Yeah, the gap in pain.
I know, but well, I could like talk to you all day. I'm like, it's fun. I love hearing other stories. I think that I know that it impacts others, and so thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for the
opportunity. I'm hoping to kind of push this podcast a little bit more. That was like one of the things this year for me that I was like, I've got to get people sharing their stories, because I've done it more in like the side of my business with my students, but I think it can go bigger. So
please keep sharing.
I want to put having the same thing. Yes, I really love just like, if I felt like the cameras were just in the background.
I know. I was like, I don't feel like looking at anything. Yeah. Like, where was I supposed to look? No, I was just like, what happened? I know. Sorry, I was going deep on it. It's a long story.
No, it was good. You guys, Kaitlin O'Toole, check her out on Instagram. What's your Instagram? Just Kaitlin O'Toole?
I think it might be Kaitlin O'Toole.
Well, just look her up on Instagram, follow her. She's amazing, as you can tell, listening to this podcast. She's gone through so much, and even with everything she's gone through, she's probably like one of the most positive human beings. When she walks in, you feel her light. Like she's literally like, you're like a sunshine. Like, you know, certain people you can just feel their energy. Like you have that energy, you have that gift. So thank you so much for being on the show. And you guys check out the Big Money Stylist. It comes out every single week. I'm going to be having new guests every single week just to share more of their stories. Hopefully it inspires you, and please share it with your friends. All right, guys, we'll see you on another episode next week at the Big Money Status Podcast. Bye.